Our main character bursts through the door, introducing the demon lord who was waiting for him. It was a day for them to settle their beef, and she wanted to also settle it. She pulled a paper out asking for marriage, and he immediately refused. He wanted to know why the brave hero would marry the demon lord. This was because she showed immense love with the hero. She thought he came there to see her, which was wrong, and she just liked him. She tried to seduce you, but he wanted to kill her for killing people for her own personal gain. She thought kill would be a new catchphrase, and obviously he was disappointed. He raised his sword and brought it down with huge force, and she shattered the sword within one punch, closing her eyes. She was embarrassed about you killing her and wanted him to do it later. She wanted to give herself to him when she was older, and he was just dumbfounded with his sword. She meant when she annihilated the human race, she would allow herself to die. She was dying with joy, and he was filled with anger. He wanted to end her before that fate occurred. In her castle, she was wearing a shirt of our main character and didn't get married. She had posters, cutouts, pictures of our boy, and wanted to see him. She asked her crew what about the images of him today. She was admiring the photos and wanted to live in his hairline. Until she saw a woman with you. The person on camera duty explained it was his childhood friend named Emma. She thought he was having fun and asked if she knew more about you than her. Her mood darkened and wanted Emma to the castle. You appeared asking what was going on for her to kidnap his childhood friend. Demon Lord said it was his fault for not sharing that information for her selfish self. She raised her hand about to end it, and he was ready to fight with his blade. She said she finally knew what she could do to cause trouble. A clone was brought out that looked just like you. It looked like the real him, and he yelled that it was weird for her to do this, and she denied it. She was sad that she only had you while you had people in his town, while she had to wait alone in the castle for you to come home. Home? He thought. She wanted you to stay by her side, scratching his hair in disbelief over himself being recreated with magic. She didn't use magic. Instead, a 3D model of him projected from a hologram through a screen. She wanted to make it with him in mind, and he wanted her to use magic instead to be less creepy. The designs and movements were made by her childhood friend with supervision from her director. He was glad she was okay and didn't want to play her games anymore. She was startled and said it wasn't a game. She knew you would ignore her unless she tried something, and she just had great love for him. She began crying with tears overflowing, startling him. He wanted to calm her down. After all, she was the demon lord. He had enough of her strange attitude, and his mission was to kill her. He was going to go after the demon lord until he killed her. She was fond of those words and thought he was accepting the marriage. She asked for kids, but he wanted to kill her instead. She was dressed as a human coming to his birthplace to smell him. She was observing photos of him and remembered places he had been to like a rock. She was taking photos before someone asked why she was there. Yu was there annoyed, and she asked for marriage. He refused. She thought it was a testament for the loving future, but his thoughts was, it was her last will. They were arguing, and he asked about her grim talk. She didn't believe she had a grim voice. Instead, she just admired him. He asked for her intentions to be here in this town. She noticed he knew it wasn't about her dreams. They were here instead. Our boy thought she was going to attack the city. A pilgrimage to the Holy Land, she said. He was annoyed she was playing around, but she wasn't. She was serious because she cleared her camera roll and had a travel book. A plush of you that sounds like him, which wasn't necessary. It was her off-duty day, but she doesn't have one, being the demon lord. He didn't care about her day off. He didn't want the town to panic because of her, but she never goes out. She dreamt of him with excitement and didn't want to bother anyone. She just wanted to see you. With no bad intentions, she knew his address and would go there. She whined, not wanting to go home, instead traversed the Holy Land. She had love towards him, but he wasn't accepting it. He gave her guidelines of what to do, allowing her to stay. He put her hat back on and wanted her horns to be hidden. She blushed, and she wanted to know the fabric softener he uses. The next day, he was there in front of the demon lord's castle at the gate. His friend wanted to go home because he's going into the castle by himself, and he's lonely. He started to confess how angry he was about him. He broke into the castle, and no one was there, anticipating a surprise attack. The demon lord ran late and asked if he waited for her. She wanted to fix her bangs, and it was hard for her to keep it in place. She wanted to appear cute for her boyfriend. He was asked if she was the demon lord. He was ready to strike an attack, but the hero didn't want him to. Instead, he kissed her hand, honored to meet her not knowing she was a pretty lady. She was memorized by his introduction. He asked what Otto was doing, but he thought she was truly his girlfriend. He wanted to date her if it was true that Yu wasn't dating her. She was blushing shy that if he said that, it would be troublesome. She was afraid of falling in the field, whatever that means. She rejected Otto and her race turned red. He grabbed Otto's hand with a serious face, wanting him to stop. She thought he was protecting her, but in reality he said it was dangerous if she were to attack. He was lecturing him for not having enough tension. The demon lord thought Yu was enough fan service, and she started ranting about love. He was ready to kill her and got his henchmen to ready up as well. He brought his magic book and started chanting a water spell. The water splashed onto Yu. Yu yelled what he was doing and he couldn't attack her. It was really an effective move against her because she fell from Yu being wet. She said they found her weakness about Yu's flat hair. He was shocked that she actually survived that. He was ready to fight again, and a wind spell was casted onto Yu. He was disappointed with why he got hit by a tornado and was the most beat up of the three. It was somehow still super effective against the demon lord. She had a sign-up of complete defeat even though they haven't fought. She was dining and she was upset about Yu. She knew the exact time down to the minute since Yu had visited. Emma told the demon lord why he has not been coming lately. Yu was part of her 4 survival needs to live: water, shelter, food, Yu. She was told she was still eating, but she didn't want any food. She hasn't been eating properly, and a demon commander had to step in. As her vassal, he had to find a solution to the problem, wanting to gather her minions. She was all alone, depressed, surrounded by pictures of Yu. A knock occurred on her door, and she said she wasn't hungry for food. Yu was there, but was it real? This shocked her, though. She really thought it was Yu for a moment, but more of them swarmed in like a rat infestation. They all stared at her, wanting to leave the situation for them. Our boy was mad because Otto sent him over to get a new weapon, but it was a reservation only. He made Yu camp somewhere for 2 weeks when he was supposed to be home earlier. He was mad and wanted to kill the demon lord and heard voices from within a building. He saw through the window that there were tons of him. He was sweating, thinking it was a ritual or black magic that will be inflicted on him. The henchmen knew they were not the hero and couldn't cheer her up in that way. Instead, they prepared generic heroes. They handed in earbuds that said, "I love you." She started blushing, realizing it was his voice, and they made it from sampling his voice and manipulating it. He made it so there was stereophonic sound, as well as made a song with his voice that made her enthusiastic. A bromide was giving over to her. Those photos were found by hidden cameras and re-editing them, having 400 of them. Lastly, he pointed to a dish laying on a table. Onigiri was on the table, and she thought it was just regular onigiri. Wrong, it was made by the hero, and she was flabbergasted. They did research on Yu, rice, and more factors to produce an onigiri the hero would make. She started to analyze the size, rice, etc. of the onigiri. She ate one and thought it was salty, and since it tasted bad, it was something the hero would have made. It was so good. The demon commander took off his mask, smiling at how cheerful she was. She started crying and dived into her crowd of henchmen. Yu was watching this and banged on the door, thinking they were a bunch of idiots. Atu was with the demon lord, and she wanted to learn how to make Yu smile. She brought out his usual face with her, and she didn't hate the expression, but wanted better. She was jealous when she saw him smiling with other people. She wanted him to smile, and Atu felt sympathy for her, until she said she would destroy everyone, or she should just make him smile to remove the feeling of jealousy. She was filled with joy when Atu offered to help her. She asked when he hung out with the hero when he smiled. His thoughts were him threatening him and a bad mood. He always smiled, he said, but she was angry at him for the fan service. A suggestion was to make him smile by giving a gift for him. She doubted herself, but Atu comforted her, saying he wouldn't complain. It didn't matter what it was, and she was going to offer a country her predecessor conquered. Atu told her it was too much for a country, and she was going to wrap it up, and it wasn't what he meant. He was happy when he got a new sword, and she thought. She sparked wanting to create the sword, but Atu thought it was too ambitious for her. She didn't know what to do. Atu slammed the table, having the greatest idea. "It's because you're the demon lord," he said. The moment he sees her, his fight mode switch activates and can't smile. She wondered what she could do, and he just looked at her smiling. She was in the farms hiding her horns. Wearing clothes meant for a proper woman who likes to bake, she asked if it would work. He assured her it would. Atu was having a blast with her, and he would be happy if she became his wife. She smiled, admiring his words, and was thankful. He was jealous of the hero and rooted for her. Yu immediately recognized the demon lord, asking her intentions. She introduced herself, but she already did it earlier. He was angry, pulling out his sword, and wanted to take her out. She started making up fibs that he didn't fall for and took a step but tripped. A lot of stuff came from her withins, for example, assorted ham and a start of papers as thick as a dictionary. She pulled a sword from her withins, and it was freshly made. It had their names on it, and he didn't need the names, but the sword was nice. She was worried about parts of the spelling, and he realized she actually spent time making it. He laughed, asking what she was actually doing, and she caught the smile. She was going to make more things with their names on it, but he declined. Otto spawned and congratulated the demon lord for making him smile. She was smiling at herself for making him smile. How contagious. Yu was grabbing onto Otto, and the demon lord ran to him with affection, wanting a hug. In a certain dungeon, our boy was searching for monsters in an attempt to get stronger. The demon lord was behind him, asking for recognition, and he wanted to kill her. She had a front row seat to her, watching Yu slay monsters, wanting to watch. He didn't want her to interrupt his dungeon session, but she only came to cheer him on, which he believed was false. Suddenly the floor vanished and they fell through. How unlucky. Yu was nodding out while she was going to perform CPR to save him. He was pissed, flicking her head, mentioning she almost killed him. He fell for a dungeon trap with the demon lord, who was happy for a specific reason. He couldn't climb the walls and needed Otto. He asked if she could use magic, which was obvious. He wanted her to make him fly to the original spot, and she was more than enthusiastic to contribute. He noticed she was shaking and asked about the issue. She was sobbing because she ran out of magic. This was because last night she was watching a video of a specific person and enlarged it with magic for the whole night. He wanted to leave the place immediately, and she was frightened of her own kind. A few hours later, he was exhausted, unable to find an exit. He had to wait until morning for help. The demon lord realized she was going to spend time with Yu in a confined space. She was having thoughts of how she slept, and he didn't want her anywhere close to him at night. She requested an overnight stay, but he values his life more than sleeping with her. She started to keep talking about why she deserved to sleep with Yu, and he wanted her to shut up. He laid the sheath of his sword and said if she came closer to me, then he would kill her. He wanted to use her as bait, and she started to creep every inch she could, as close as she could. She laughed, having lots of fun, even offering him to sleep on her. She mentions when you don't feel sleepy, you should count something. She started counting in Yu's and started muttering ridiculous stories. He couldn't believe that the demon lord would sleep next to the hero. She hunched over onto him asleep, and he was shocked. He wanted her to get off and threatened to kill her, but it didn't work. She was telling Yu to not go, and her dream was Yu getting abolished by vegetables. He was just staring, letting her rest on his shoulder while he grew attached. It seemed like she was awake after all and was bright when he didn't push her away. The next morning, her subordinates came to pick her up, and he wanted them out of sight. At her castle, her snack was ready, being pancakes. She was like a happy child wanting whipped cream and wanted to attract attention. Someone called her name out, and his henchmen didn't know what was happening. A nerd in demon form appeared, having unseen intentions. His name was Selk and was one of the most powerful demon commanders there is. He usually came to report what incidents may occur outside. He heard she was sleeping in the dungeon with the hero, and this comment made her instantly deny the accusation. He pulled out a paper of him and Yu, and she wanted it, and he wanted to know if she really wanted to fight the hero. She was the demon lord, and if she was weak, no one would follow her. She was either weak or didn't want to fight the hero. His subordinate protected her, and he said it was also his fault of how the demon lord turned out. This is because she was sneakily trying to eat pancakes called fluffy pancakes with plenty of butter. He wanted her to fight the hero and will leave when she does. She tried to persuade him, telling him that there's no guarantee he will be here, but tough luck for her. Our hero called out to her, telling her it was the day to fight. She said she wanted to fight, but she had no ounce of fighting will within her. She hated that she was threatening Yu and had to look like the true demon lord. She wanted him to come to her. He dashed forward, asking if she truly was the demon lord. Her face blushed because of how close he was, and started to look at his skin. She looked around thinking Selk hadn't come yet, but there he was, just staring at her. She continued with her speech, wanting to stay calm, and Yu thought about what may have happened. He thought she was just a diversion and she was a fake. He wanted to know where the real Demon Lord was. He was holding tight onto her shoulders, looking around while she was getting sexually aroused. Selk was also looking for the real one, and she pushed Yu into the ground by accident. She was sorry for knocking him down, and then she sneezed, causing the earth to shake. Selk was trying to look through the dust and came with a negative conclusion. She was on top of Yu, and she had a murderous intent with blood coming through her nose. He noticed her presence was too strong, and she proved herself thus. He didn't need to spectate anymore. She didn't know why he left, and Yu wanted her to wipe her nose. The next day, she was holding a plushie of Yu and started taking photos. She got a good shot of it and was excited to be in the city. She wanted to run into him, and someone noticed she was the Demon King. Emma, the hero's childhood friend, recognized her. She didn't know she was in town, and Emma noticed something about her arm sleeve. It was split open, and she didn't notice while Emma wondered what happened. She liked her clothes, and Emma's shop was around the corner, and she wanted the Demon Lord over. Emma fixed her shirt and asked if she really wanted to be here. After all, she was probably looking for Yu. She was hoping to meet Yu but didn't know where he was, and Emma offered to check his house to see if resided there. She was in disbelief that Yu's nice building was right next to her. The Demon Lord was mumbling about experiences Emma might have experienced, and these experiences were all nonsense. The lights were off, making it seem like the hero wasn't there, and the Demon Lord was disappointed and spotted the wall. It was Yu during his childhood playing with Emma. The pictures in question were all when Yu was young and getting diffed by a dog. She wanted to learn about satisfactory memories Emma had of Yu, and she was going to explain one of them. On the wall, a split was forming because of Yu. She whipped out a frame, and Emma didn't want her to frame anything. She pulled out a hand-me-down shirt that Yu gave to her brother. She then started to protect all these clothes by adding security. The Demon Lord started to play audio of Yu, and Emma brought out footage to link them both. After all that, the Demon Lord was tired from watching videos of Yu. Emma pointed out the lights were on in Yu's house, and she immediately started sweating. It was the real Yu with his limited merchandise she had never seen before. She started to call out to him, and Yu had a terrible perspective of who was at the window having an autistic reaction. Happy reaction. He waved back, and this caused her lifespan to drastically fall, creating shock to Emma. Next chapter, she was chilling in the hot waters, stopped trying to peek at her melons. She wore a robe and was ready to duel her henchmen in ping pong. She walked into a room looking for ice cream, but a human was there. It was Yu, and they both were in disbelief how each other was disrupting their vacations. They both were in a stormy mood, and Yu decided to leave. After all, he shouldn't hang out around her. She didn't want him to leave, and he couldn't relax when he was around. She grabbed his sleeve, pulling it back, and he wanted to be let go, but Otto called out his name. They both were out of sight, but crammed into a small corridor. He blamed her for not leaving fast enough, and the situation wasn't favorable for him. He envisioned Otto snitching and telling everyone about their romantic relationship. It was game over if he was spotted. Otto assumed he left. Meanwhile, she decided to make some noise. Otto called for Yu, asking what he was seeking for. Maybe he was surprising him, or they were playing hide-or-seek, but Otto was delusional. Yu was sweating. Otto was confused about what was going on. She started sweating and trembling more than vibrations from a speaker. Yu held onto her shoulder, wanting her to calm down. She did, but was thinking about Yu's up-close perspective. Otto was going to leave and mentioned how weird he's been acting, which probably was normal. He opened the closet, allowing the light to seep inside, and she fell. He caught her with a hand, and she fainted due to an overload of our hero. When the Demon Lord arrived back to her castle, she was hugging the floor, acting like she melted, because the air conditioner was broken. She can only remember moments with Yu and looked up, thinking she hallucinated about Yu being in front of her. She had nothing to regret, and Yu would put her out of misery. The hero had a skill issue and missed the first sword attack, and it's all about the attempts. She wanted him to back off, and the hero was very confident he'd one-shot her. She was all sweaty now and spent a good time preparing herself. He tried to hold his sword in his usual stance. He learned the castle was hot because of the broken air conditioner. It was so hot he had to take off his clothes, and she didn't want that view of him. Well, not yet. She wanted to film him taking off his clothes. The heat was greater than Yu, and his head started to get attacked by the heat. She offered ice cream and suggested flavors he can have. He initially didn't want anything, but the heat was too strong for him to resist the cold. He was staring at his ice cream bar, hallucinating, with more memory loss than someone with amnesia. Just with a touch, he turned his head to see the demon lord flustered, thinking it was a dream. His mind started to degrade, and her aura turned all fiery. The demon lord was on fire, and luckily the air conditioner would be fixed.